Good evening and welcome to tonight's webinar, which is all about something that's probably close to my heart, which is the idea of working between things like burnout, the blended life, or a work-life balance. So what we're going to do is share the screen very shortly, invite you in to take part, ask questions along the way. I'd love to hear about them. And what we're going to do is, I guess, explore some different ways to look at your particular life, your particular way of conducting your business and the balance between your business and your life, and see what we can do. I like the way that this t-shirt's coming up on screen. It's looking rather good. What we'll do is get that underway in just a moment. Let's share screen and let's go. Come on, we can do it. And done. So I say welcome. This is brought to you by Business Station and the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program in conjunction with Regional Development Australia, Brisbane, and Treaty Business Consulting as well. A quote from one of my favorite country singers of old, Dolly Parton: "Never get so busy making a living that you forget to make a life." Sounds like a song lyric. Or it might have been from 9 to 5, that movie she was in many, many years ago as well. This will be available again a little bit later on when I load it up on Business Station's YouTube site, as well as my own YouTube site. So if you look for YouTube and actually find that particular name, either my name, Dante St. James, or Business Station, you'll be able to find it on there. What we're going to look at tonight is the concept of work-life balance, or this afternoon, depending on where you are, the concept of the work-life blend, and then looking at making that particular balance or blend work for you. And I've got a lot of personal insights on how I've burned out before and how I came back from that, as well as how I moved between those different concepts depending on the work I was doing at that time. My background in education is on screen. I do a lot of work with Facebook Australia, Google Australia, and Australian government programs such as Be Connected, the ASBAS Digital Solutions, and the NEIS program, New Enterprise Incentive Scheme. Australia does have something of a work-life crisis. You can just look around your friends circle and know there's at least one person, perhaps two or more, that are definitely suffering when it comes to work-life balance, or not really having a work-life balance, which is sad because there's some very, very, very talented, very, very beautiful people who are working themselves into an early grave. On average, over 40 hours across employees. So we don't necessarily work the 38-hour week in Australia. On average, across all employees, it's about 40 hours. The average is over 42 hours for those who don't work in government positions, or not-for-profits, where they have very defined work hours and a lot of demarcation in place. Our overtime culture then goes into more than 48 hours for business owners, which is starting to get to a danger zone. And when we say a danger zone, we mean pretty much that at 39 hours a week. So you get that 38. Once you get beyond that, your productivity starts to decline. This has been measured by doctors, by surgeons, by the Australian Department of Health. It is a very well-known thing that productivity tends to decline the more hours we add on. At 48 hours, that productivity then doesn't just decline, but it increasingly declines. It declines faster and declines faster and faster. There are long-term health risks for those who work over 48 hours a week. I'm in a bit of a season myself where I'm working a lot more than that, but that is a season. This is not a long-term thing. So if it's long-term, then we need to start to address those things that are beginning to cause us to have those long-term health risks. And those health risks are depression, anxiety. I've had those both myself that came as a result of working ridiculously long hours. Poor sleep is a pretty obvious one. If you're going to bed directly from work, you're not having a buffer zone between the two, you can see how that would get to your mind and get in your head and start to cause you some real problems. Heart disease, largely due to stress and ongoing, like the overabundance of cortisol in your system, and also due to poor eating habits that often come with working long. If you're working long hours, you're eating a lot of McDonald's on the way home and ordering a lot of Domino's on a Friday night, and perhaps eating in patterns that are not particularly suitable for the long-term health of you. Type 2 diabetes is another big risk in there. And again, that's because mainly because of the sedentary lifestyle that comes with working a lot. We're not talking about work people who are working in building sites and doing physical work. We are talking about people who are sitting on their butts all day. People just like me and you. And of course, there is a cancer risk as well, where you have a risk of poor diet, poor sleep, depression, and anxiety, overabundance of cortisol in your system. There are often links with cancer, especially with those who already have predispositions or genetic risk factors in play. The lifestyle risks are things like your relationships. They really do start to break down. When you don't look after your relationships, when you don't let your family know that they come before your work, when you don't, meet up with your girlfriend or boyfriend at a regular basis and talk about things other than work, you then have those relationships suffer. Divorce is as much brought about by people who overwork as it is by money itself. And if money is the greatest issue that causes divorce, then I would say that a lot of that could be caused by the amount of time we're working, because time equals money and work equals money as well. So they're very closely related. Job satisfaction is pretty much out the window. You can only work this level of hard, long hours before something has to break. And what it usually is a failure of your lifestyle and to live up to your expectations, because you're spending all your time working, you're spending all your time in the office, you're spending all the time on the road, or you're spending all the time working from home and not actually having other things outside of that work. Like, for instance, the ability to see friends, the ability to spend time with your kids, the ability to spend time with those who matter in your life. And then there's increased suicidal thoughts. And please do call Beyond Blue or the Lifeline call if you do find these things come up. Increased suicidal thoughts come because of isolation, I guess. You are disconnected often from your support. You're often suffering in your relationships, increasingly getting worse levels of job satisfaction. All those things leading to someone who feels a little bit mentally not quite right. Mental health issues are rampant amongst those who work very, very long hours. So there's two very different approaches we take from this. One is the classic work-life balance. And the classic work-life balance I'll describe as something that's very commonly found amongst those people who are employees, very commonly found amongst those who are in very demarcated and regulated environments like universities. I wouldn't say hospitals, they're one of the worst, but a lot of other government positions, government administrative positions, things like schools, places like not-for-profits, where the health and well-being of employees is of paramount importance, and it's something that's often written into constitutions and written into the rules of the workplace. The employee manual will often say that you cannot stay longer than 4:21 in the afternoon. You must leave the premises. You must go. The work-life blend is going to lend itself a lot more to those people who tend to be freelancers, to those who work in private enterprise as opposed to in the public sector, and places where there's a bit more, like tech industry, for instance. They have a lot of long hours, but there's a lot of flexibility around how those hours actually count up and how that work's done, including where that work might be done. So we'll look at work-life balance first. Now, based very much around the experience of being an employee rather than being a business owner. Now, a lot of this comes from very structured workplaces. Corporations, for instance, are very good at ensuring that employees have support within the workplace to do the right thing. It's also based around what we call the 8-8-8 rule, the 8 hours work, 8 hours play, 8 hours sleep rule. It's a common thing. 24 hours a day, break it into three. 8 of those hours you're going to be sleeping. 8 of those hours you're going to be working, or 7.6 if you're going to follow the actual rules. And then 8 hours that's for you, for your family, for your friends. Now, the reality is in many cities, so if you're looking at somewhere like Brisbane or Perth, there's a commute involved. So one of those or two of those hours could be dedicated to just getting to and from the workplace. If you're a business owner, hopefully your business is located fairly close to where you work, or somehow in the same house as where you live. So that would be a very big advantage, because you're not losing one of those 8 hours to get to where you need to go to. So the 888 rule is very much ingrained in this. It came out of the Industrial Revolution, where it was thought that 8 hours a day would be when it's dedicated to, doing the good Lord's work, or doing the work of the great Protestant work ethic of making sure you work those 8 hours. But then 8 hours is given over to family, to food production, to being able to maintain cottage industries and that kind of thing. And then 8 hours, of course, for sleep. I don't know about you, but I don't get a lot of 8 hour sleep. So I'm around that 6.5 hour sleep, a bit like Jeff Bezos at the moment. Number three is usually in a place where they take their leave, their breaks, and their holidays, and it's encouraged that they actually do it. The whole idea of starting to bank lots of leave is actually now frowned upon in many, many workplaces. In the last full time workplace I worked in, I banked like months and months of leave that I got a great payout when I left that job. The problem being, of course, that even though I left that job and had a great payout, I also didn't really have a life. I left there sick. I left there with mental health issues. I left there with a lot of pain going on, a lot of resentment, because I worked so hard and so many hours, and all I had to show for it was this payout, which of course, like big bunches of money, they just go. I spent it on buying into a business, and it was almost forgotten the day that I even got it. But the taking of leave, breaks, and holidays, particularly in government not-for-profits, where they're usually up to 6 weeks as opposed to the usually mandated 4, you find that if you're not taking that break and you're not taking that leave, then you are strongly encouraged to take it very, very soon. It tends to suit those who have also achieved a certain level of status or stability in both their life and their career. These are people who have children, they have mortgages, they have very, very predictable lives. They have, things they have to get to at certain times. They have commitments. They have a very defined start and a very defined stop to their workday. Now, these don't tend to be younger workers. These tend to be workers who have got to middle age, could be about their 30s, up to 35 is where this usually starts kicking quite a lot, where you're not generally trying to build your first steps of your career, where you're working hard to impress people, or you're working hard to just catch up. These are people who know who they are, know what they're doing, and have some degree of status in their workplace. So you can see how this may not suit the average small business owner, because work lives on one side of the equation, life lives in a very separate box. They do not cross over. And we sometimes, as employees, really do resent when that work and life cross over, when work's saying, oh, we're doing a Friday night drinks, you should be there. And you're like, I'm not doing that. I'm finished work. I'm out of here, bud. See ya. People who don't want to socialize with other people from their workplace because they don't want work and life crossing over at all. An example could be Clementine, a yoga instructor, where she has a very, very tight timeline. She has her first yoga appointment at 6 a.m. and she's finished because she works very early in the morning. She finishes early in the afternoon, starts at 6, finishes at 3. She makes sure that then from 3 through to whatever time she wants to finish is her time to do what she wishes to do. She has a couple of kids, so 3 o'clock works for picking up the kids from school and getting them home and getting them all sorted. Hubby gets home a little bit later because he works in the city and does a commute, and then she's able to get everything set as far as the kids are, so she can then go when the hubby gets home and takes over the kids to go and do the things she wants to do with her friends. She gets to do the things like going to the library because she wants to go and do some reading, get some quiet time, or she goes and does some yoga and meditation of her own. A very strong delineation between 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., which is when she works her job or her business, if that's her business, that yoga studio. And then after that, she doesn't even think about work. She goes and does the things that she needs to do, both in her life for her kids and family, but also for her own mental health and well-being. When we look at the work-life blend, where they tend to sort of blend into each other, and that picture of the marbles on the screen showing that, there's a point where the two do mix. When we look at that, it's common with working mums. Working mums are kind of the pioneers of this because they've got the kids at home and they're working a full-time job as well. And when this is happening, and working dads too, for that matter too, where they have to fulfill a lot of commitments that are inside the traditional 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 working hours. So they need something that's going to have far more flexible working hours. They need to be maybe start early, finish late, maybe do reduced hours so they can get out and take care of the kids, pick up the kids, or do the things they want to do. Some of these people have set it up so that they can work pretty much anywhere at any time. They don't even need, and you see a lot of this during COVID-19, where people in Sydney and Melbourne and the bigger cities have abandoned the cities in their droves and moved to do a lot of telework and telecommuting from regional areas where they actually would prefer to be, where the rent's cheaper, it's a little bit freer and easier to get around, and no lockdowns. Here in Darwin, where I am, we've had a lot of that, where there's a lot of people moved here and have bought up all the real estate and rented out all the houses. There's not actually a lot of real estate left on the market now. It's because work can happen pretty much anywhere at any time. It doesn't have to be relegated to the 9 to 5. It doesn't have to be all done in a particular very tight timeline. It's something which can be done very, very quickly and very easily from a workplace, from a shared office space, or even from a spare room at home, or even in so many cases from the kitchen table. Once the kids are off to school, you do the work at the kitchen table and off you go. This means that work often occurs around other commitments. It means like Megan, who I work with, can pop out and pick up the kids and deal with that side of her life. But she then will log on later on when the kids are in bed and work late as well. So she may not arrive in the office till 10 a.m. and she may get out of there at 2 p.m. But then she works after hours as well, because that's what suits her with kids' commitments, getting the kids to judo, to ballet, to lessons, to daycare, spending time with a husband, and actually doing the things it takes to be a person with a family and a person with commitments that are outside of work. The traditional 9 to 5 wouldn't work in that scenario. It means that you don't have to necessarily work in a 7.6 hour block. You can work in 9 to 12 and then take a 4 hour break and come back, and whatever really works for you, but also happens to work with either the employer or the contracts that you're currently working on. It looks a little bit more like this. It's a work-life blend. Work and life kind of blend into each other, and they will impact each other. Work sometimes means that your life has to sort of like skew around it, but then other times your life is going to force work to skew around it as well. It's a bit of a game of give and take, a bit of compromise, and a way for you to balance out things over a longer term, rather than having mandated balance, which is work is here, life is here. In this case, they sometimes do blend into each other. So an example here will be Joseph, who's a business development manager for let's just say a large paint distributor. Now, he does not have to be in an office. He does not have to necessarily go out and meet clients in his sales patch in person all the time. Sometimes he will, but the most of the time, he doesn't really need to be in an office that works from 9 to 5. In fact, most of the meetings that he would normally go to in an office can be done via Zoom or through Microsoft Teams anyway. So the realistically, he doesn't necessarily need to be in office, especially if he's been working there quite a while and is very well known and trusted within the organization. This is where there might be a little bit of a problem when it comes to younger workers who are still in that sort of period of trying to prove who they are, prove that they can be trusted, and to prove the level of work. So the blend is not necessarily something which is suited towards younger workers who are yet to sort of prove their mettle or prove their worth in an organization. It's often something which is offered first to those who have been around and have, I guess, quote, earned the privilege of being able to do it. So we see this in a lot of administrative roles, sales roles. We see it in a lot of marketing roles, technical roles, where someone doesn't necessarily have to be on site to be able to get that work done. Likewise, too, Joseph may have it so that he does go into the office 2 days a week, but Tuesday and Thursday. But Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, he works from home, and he's working at very different times, because as long as he gets his sales quotas, as long as he reaches his targets, they don't really care at the paint distribution firm how he does that. Whether he does it all on a Monday and takes the rest of the week off, or whether he does it on maybe Tuesday and Wednesday and takes all the days off around it. If that's what works for him, that's what works for him. So Joseph's case, as the business development manager, this could be the best way for him to go. But like any arrangement, there are pros and there are most certainly cons as well. In the case of a work-life balance, the advantages are very clear. There's a defined work and defined non-work set of hours. So you know that your 9 to 5 is when you work. Everything out of that is boss, don't call me. I don't want to know anything about it. It's also a very predictable way to work and a very predictable way to live. It makes it so easy to plan ahead. I don't live this particular work-life balance because it's very hard for me to tee up times with my friends to go and see them for a beer or catch up with them and go to the footy or watch something together or go and grab dinner. It's actually a really difficult thing to do because my work, by definition, takes me away from here very much often. So the predictability is not quite there. There are definite health benefits to a work-life balance. When you have some work-life balance, some very defined boundaries between work and life, it means you've got time to do things like exercise. I do remember when I was at my peak physical fitness, it was a time when I had a very defined work-life balance. I'd work from the office 2 days a week. The rest of the time, I'd work from my home office, and I was able to go into the gym morning and evening easily and fit them both in. It didn't feel like I was rushing my day at all. So the health benefits to that kind of thing are absolutely there. When your day is structured, when your day is predictable, when your week is structured and predictable, you can do things like making time to go to the gym for an hour, hour and a half, and do it in the morning and the evening, going for walks, walking the dog, taking out the trash, making sure you're cooking dinners, meal prepping, all those things fit into a much more defined and predictable way of living your life. The problems, though, of work-life balance means that lack of flexibility makes it really difficult when things change. When you build your life around an expectation that you work a 9 to 5 job, and then suddenly your job is outsourced to somewhere else, and you're forced to go into a different role where you're working from 12 to 8, suddenly you realize, oh, wait, I'm not adjusting this. My life doesn't suit this. I don't have the right kind of structure to be able to suit this. Then it takes a lot of difficulty to make that change because work life balance relies upon things remaining the same. Relies upon a stability of employment, a stability of workplace, a stability of business. That means you can predict the times very, very accurately, day in, day out, week in, week out, in order to make sure that you go to the gym every single day at 4:30 p.m. in the afternoon means that you know that you definitely every day are going to finish at 4:30 p.m. and nothing really stops you. You get booted out the door at 4:21, you can be at the gym at 4:30, right? Makes sense. But when things change, then that's not quite the same. So the things you might have paid for, the things you might have set up, the routines you have in place that supported that 9 to 5 lifestyle, when it changes to a 10 to 8, suddenly those things don't make sense anymore. You're going to bed a little later, you're waking up a little later. Going to the gym doesn't feel the same because you're missing out on the classes that you would normally do much earlier in the morning at, say, 6 a.m. And the biggest problem, I think, with this work-life balance stuff is that it's really unrealistic when it comes to new business owners. If you are new to all this, if you're a new business owner, this is utterly unrealistic for you to be able to live to, because the reality is that you're going to spend more hours setting up that business and perfecting your process and your product and your promotion, that you're just not going to be able to do that all in a very defined time. Now, I know we all wish we could. We all wish we could put together this life that allows us to do it. But the reality is that when you're starting up a new business, work life balance is the first thing that gets pushed out. Predictability just doesn't seem to be there because you're still forcing yourself to understand this new life, forcing yourself to figure out what your new routine is and forcing yourself to understand what that effect is on your mental health, whether you actually want this change. In fact, that's behind what a lot of the failure of business is in its first year of operation, is not necessarily a lack of cash flow or a lack of viability of the business. It's more to do with the viability of the person who's running the business. If they are not able to make that change into quite a lot of work and quite a lot of change going on around them, and it's shifting sands, then they will fail. And that's behind a lot of the failures in small businesses in their first year of operation. Now we swing around to the advantages of what we call the work-life blend. So we're doing something which is a little bit more flexible And that flexibility allows you to roll with the changes so much easier. If you're in a position where your work hours change because you sort of move everything around a lot more easily, and you're used to working with people who will accommodate those changes, then it's very, very flexible. The moves happen more easily with change. So, for instance, if it's a location, it's changing your office space, if it's changing your hours, if it's changing the length of time you work, if it's changing the basis of the job you're doing, or if in the case of a small business, you are changing your opening hours in response to a change to say it's Christmas shopping time. So you're going to work a lot later than what you would normally do during a regular week in the year. Well, you can move much more easily with those changes than you can when you're used to having a work-life balance, which says, I start now, I finish now. Do not talk to me because I'm no longer in business until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. on the dot. Because there's no set hours, work fits around other kinds of things. So for instance, if you've got a athletics carnival that's on this weekend and your kid needs a lot more training this week, which means being there to pick them up after work, after school at an earlier time than you normally would, you just fit it in. It can be done. You've got a situation where your boss, where your partner, where your workplace, where your own business, if you're the boss of it, you already know that you're able to fit these changes in because you've done it before. You've already proven that your work life blend is working. No set hours means that your work can fit around the other factors in your life, whether that's family, friends, holidays, whatever you want to do, even the location of where you want to work from, particularly if you're working digitally like I am right now. I could be doing this at any space in time in the world. I can be doing it in Perth. I can be doing it in Adelaide. I can be doing it in North Queensland. Right now, I'm doing it in the spare room at my house in Darwin. It could be anywhere. It just allows you to set your hours and your locations around other factors rather than having to say, I need to be ready at 9 a.m. and I need to finish at 5 p.m. That's all my life is. The problems of work life blend are, oh boy, I've certainly had this one come up a number of times in life. The lack of definition can bring what we call work creep or business creep. It's where work creeps into more and more hours of your day as the days go on. You might start off with some very strong principles and say, I do not work any more than 40 hours a week. Wake up 6 months later and you're working a 60-hour week. It can creep in. It just starts with, oh, I just need to put another hour just to put these Facebook posts together. I'll just do that and then I'll finish. Then the next week, it's like, oh, I'll just put in this 2 hours to do my promotional marketing and do my MailChimp setup and my Facebook posts and my LinkedIn posts. And then before you know it, you're working an extra 20 hours on top of what you normally would because it just crept up a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, particularly as your business grows. The faster and bigger your business grows, this scope creep or work creep, where the work creeps more and more into your day, that is going to happen even more so as the business gets busier, because you'll get to that point where you're not quite busy enough, that you're not quite big enough and quite cash flow positive enough to employ someone to take that stuff off your hands. So you have to still do it because you're making the sales. You just have to be able to do that work, which means extra hours. You're selling more time for money. So instead of selling 40 hours of your time, you're selling 60 hours of your time. Really unhealthy way to live. It's also difficult to make plans and predict availability. And this is one thing I find quite difficult sometimes with my more work life blended life. It means that when I want to catch up with friends, and usually a Wednesday night is when I would do that. I catch up, and if I'm in town, all my friends would get together on Wednesday night. We go out for dinner at the pub and have a laugh and have a chat, see how life is, laugh, cry, all that sort of stuff on a Wednesday night. And I really enjoy doing that. The problem there being that I'm doing a webinar now during dinner time at 6 p.m. where I am, 6:30 on the East Coast, maybe in 7:30 in some parts of the East Coast. The work has crept over into the 5:30 to 6:30 slot in my weekdays because I find this is the best time to get these done. And I get a better attendance level on webinars at this time as well when other people have finished their work for the day. You can start to see the problem as that work life creeps even more. Then I tend to force it later and later as people. I go with the market. The market says it wants it now. The market then starts to say, oh, we want to be able to do this on a Sunday because we've got spare time to burn. I start doing that Sunday. What you would normally think is that the smart person would do 2 hours on the Sunday and take those off the first 2 hours of a Monday morning. But there I am Monday morning, every Monday morning, 8 a.m., ready to start and go again. So that creep does happen, which makes those plans and that availability even more difficult to work with because you tend to work much longer hours. It's just a part of what comes with work life blend. You don't want to necessarily end the work because you actually tend to like the work, particularly if you're a business owner. You're going to love the thing you're doing, right? You want to put the hours in, but it's going to be difficult to make plans and predict your availability around that. It's going to be difficult to control the creeping of work further and further into your life. So, work life blend does certainly have some very good things about it, but it's also got a lot of problems that make it a little bit hard. So, how do you find your particular blend or your particular balance, whichever way you want to look at it? So, let's take a quick look. Family really should be knowing that they are the most important of your life. Your partner, your kids should never doubt that they come before your work does. Now, this is difficult, especially when you've got a business, because your family tends to be very much integrated in with your business, right? They will be there with you quite often. If you're a work from home person, work from home dad, or a work from home mum, the kids are right there with you. So you've got this situation where it's hard for them to know that they're more important if they're constantly being pushed aside, saying, no, no, I'm on a webinar. No, no, go away. I'm on a webinar. Daddy's on a webinar. You need to stay outside there. That's when it gets a bit messy. So you know to pick the right situation that works for you by selecting the work-life balance or the work-life blend based upon how that works with your family. If you find that your partner, your wife, your husband is starting to get a little bit narky at you because of the hours you're spending at work and doing your business, then you're starting to face a problem. They're only going to put up with that for so long before the relationship will break down. Likewise with the kids. When they stop asking you to spend time with them, when they stop asking daddy to play with them, when they stop asking mummy to come and read to them, then you know there's a problem. They're starting to disengage from you. When your partner and your kids start to disengage from you, you know that you're working too much. And it may seem like, how am I supposed to do both of these things? There's always a way, there's always help, and there's always a method where you can actually have a kid come sit next to you while you're working and they do their bit. I've seen it with a lady, Lucy, who I work with on a very, very common quite a lot. I work with her quite a lot on a nearly daily basis. And she often has a little girl, Annabelle, there. She's currently on Zoom calls and she's on lockdown in Victoria, which is lifted tonight. Thank you to Melbourne. You've done a great job in being able to nip that in the bud. In her case, so she'll often have Annabelle there with her, coloring in stuff, asking her questions while she's on a Zoom call. Her blended life has learned that we know how to deal with that. We know that Annabelle's there. We know that it's going to take a little bit longer just to get through some of the points on the agenda of the meeting. But at the same time, we know that it's what's working for her. It's not making a big difference to our lives as her colleagues, but it means that she's actually able to live that more blended life. You know that you've got a good balance or a good blend when you feel like you're in control. Now, when I say in control, I don't mean like cracking the whip. I mean, you know that you could turn up or down any of those areas of your life. You could turn up the social life a little bit. You could, turn up the fire hose of work a little bit and do a little bit more work, earn a bit more money if you needed to. You know that you could go and have that night out with your friends on a Friday night rather than having to sit up writing that report. When you know you've got control over those things and you can turn up and down that fire hose of work or that fire hose of social life or the fire hose, and I use the fire hose principle here because think of water coming through a hose. A fire hose allows you to adjust with the nozzle whether it comes out more or less. So the fire hose of work or life, you can control that. Then you know you're in a pretty good position in life and you're understanding that you have control over what goes on in your life. Now, of course, there's always things that happen outside of our realm of control. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking more about the things you know you can control in your life. You're able to control those in your life. That's when you know you've got the right balance or blend. If you're rushed and stressed all the time, that is not a good balance or a blend. But if rushed and stressed is not your usual state, if it's just around for a season, so right now I'm in the middle of a month-long season of where this is like really hard work to the point where it's actually getting quite frustrating now, and I just want to take a week off and have a sleep. That is a big tell that things are not in balance or they're not blended the right way in my life. I've got a very blended life of work and play, and they tend to sometimes a bit more play, sometimes a bit more work. It depends. I can be very much myself in my job and work from wherever I like, which I really enjoy. But if rushed and stressed is your usual state of living from week in, week out, month in, month out, and it has been like that for a number of years, then your blend's not right and your work-life balance is out. So that's how you tell that you've got a good balance. It's rushed and stressed is not what your default setting in life is, right? If people aren't always asking if you're busy, asking you, you're always answering, I'm busy, then you're in a good spot. Now, if you need to take time to disconnect, or you don't have, let me put it this way, if you don't have the time to disconnect from everything every so often, like for instance, I'll finish this webinar, I'm going to go disconnect, not take my phone, and go out and ride a scooter around the CBD of Darwin just for a bit of fresh air and fun, just to get my mind off work. And then I'll come back and work another couple of hours. That's me taking time to disconnect, right? If you don't have time to disconnect because that half an hour that you take to do your disconnect time or go and do yoga or go to the gym is going to negatively impact your work, then you know your balance or your blend is not quite right. Huh? You get this? But if you do have time to disconnect and you can go and do something, even by taking a half an hour off and taking a walk, then you know that you have the right kind of balance or blend, or at least are on the way to having the right kind of balance or blend. When you have a good balance or a good blend in your work life state, it allows you to be present in the moment. This is what they call mindfulness. This is where you can say that I'm not sitting here with my emails up on this screen whilst I'm trying to do this and looking at my phones and trying to do this and bring up this phone and checking on that one and making sure that I'm reading that piece of paper. I'm very present in the moment with this particular webinar. I'm not thinking about the next thing I need to do. I'm not thinking about the going and cooking dinner and then going for the walk. And what I'm doing is staying here, right now in this particular webinar. If you're able to be present in the present, and that's usually how you are, I've taken a photo here of a woman doing yoga, like a meditation in the middle of the workday. That may not be quite you. It's certainly not me. But if I'm able to sit back and just go, that was a really hard day. I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to turn off, disconnect, and not take anything with me. Be very present in the moment, be very mindful in the moment. Then we know that you've got a pretty good balance or a pretty good blend, right? Being able to not have to be always thinking of what's going on that screen, that screen, that screen, these screens, those screens, and wondering what's happening with every little notification coming through. I actually turn over my phones. I turn them over upside down in a way to say, this is the way that I'm not going to take any distractions so I can be present in the very moment. A person with a lack of balance and a lack of really good blend will tend to have their phones all turned up towards them. So you'll see them always looking away and go, huh? You'll see them on a Zoom call, always looking at something else. Or they'll try and do these ones where they have it here and you can see them, they're looking down at their phone, but they still seem to be that they're looking at their, it seems like they're looking up at their screen, but they're not really. They're looking down at their phone. That's when they're not being present in the moment. They're not being present in the present. And a successful work-life balance and a successful blend both feature that you have both time to spare and money to spare. If you don't have either, you're probably in trouble and you really need to make some very different life choices. But if you've got tons of money but no time, or tons of time and no money, you're out of balance and your blend's not right either. So if you've got money and you got some time, both in the same kind of area, you're probably going down the right path. And especially with all the other options I've mentioned so far, and what are the signs that tell you that you definitely are on the right track, then you can say very safely that you are in the right place when you've got multiples of these. So not just the time and the money, not just being present in the present, not just having time to disconnect, not being in a rushed and stressed state all the time. If you match all of those, there's a very good chance you're in a very good place. Another trick is if you work from home or you've got that blended lifestyle like I do, there's a very separate place for work in your home. I don't work on the couch. I don't work in the bed. I don't work in the kitchen or the kitchen table. I work at my desk in my home office. I close the door. I dress up every day. Usually I'm a bit casual because I'm after work hours now, but I usually wear a collared shirt and I dress appropriate to working, and I act appropriately with that and work the appropriate amount of hours I need to get the work done that I need to get done. Having a dedicated space for work in your home is a really healthy place to separate the work and the life. But having sitting yourself at the kitchen table where you're surrounded by the washing and the laundry and you want to fold and you want to iron and there's all these distractions going on is not a balanced or blended way to work. Blended doesn't mean that you're literally doing multitasking, that you're sitting here on a Zoom call folding clothes at the same time. It's more about having, yes, you still got separation of work and life, but they don't tend to have defined hours. They are blended a bit. So when you need to finish at 3 o'clock on one day, you do. If you're going to work until 8 o'clock another day, you do that as well. You've got the option to do it. The work-life balance says there's a defined end and a defined beginning. Blend says, yeah, sometimes those things move around, they change a bit. Having a system in place to know when everything is happening. Whew, I don't know what I would do without my Google Calendar. I was actually looking it up on this screen right now, and I have to say it's a mess of colors and all that. But I tell you what, I know when everything is happening. I know everything that I have to know about my week. I'll bring it up and I might even share you a little bit of a look at what mine looks like. It's a very big week this week, so it's looking a bit scary to be honest. But let me see. I'll share that screen, go up here and share my other screen. So here's a little bit of a look at what my calendar looks like right now. It doesn't look very balanced. It doesn't look very blended. It looks like I've had nothing but one thing after another thing after another thing. But the beauty of it is that I know where everything is. I know exactly what's going to happen and when it's going to happen, which gives me a lot of ability to, well, be in the moment, which was one of our tips from before. It allows me to be very mindful where I'm at. It allows me to know that when I'm with Cassie earlier today, with Alana earlier today, I was 100% with them. When I was on the webinar with Phil DeBella from DeBella Coffee, I was 100% in the moment with him and his webinar. And right now, I know that I'm in this particular structuring of business for burnout, blend, or balance. I have to remember the names of it there. I knew that I have to 100% be there. If I leave this particular thing up here and look at my system, I'll start to go, oh my goodness, I've got this thing to do next. I've got this thing to do next. I need to get rid of that now. So that's also being in the moment, is getting rid of that off my screen so I can't see it anymore. I have my system. It's on my phone. It travels with me on my Google Calendar. It's really easy for me to tell what's available and when, which judging by that calendar, I'm not available for the next 5 years, but we'll talk about that at another stage. What it does mean, though, that I have the comfort of knowing when everything is happening because everything is in its place. It's booked. I even know where I have to be at any of those times as well. If there's a link to a Zoom call, it's there. A good work-life balance and a good work-life blend has a system in place so that you know when things are supposed to happen. That makes so much more of a relaxing way to live your life and to conduct your workday. Including some exercise in your routine. I haven't been too good with this lately myself. I'll be completely honest with you. Um, Having that sort of routine where you have exercise is a good balance and is good with a blend as well. The difference may be, though, in the balance says that you finish work at 4:30 and you go directly to the gym, and that's your allocated gym time. It's why gyms are so damn busy after work hours, because that's when everyone goes. But if you're on the blended lifestyle where you go, you know what, I'm going to take 2 hours off over lunch and I'm going to go to the gym when people aren't generally there. Or, you know what, I'm going to work for 2 hours, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour, come back, work for another 4 hours, and I'm going to go and do some yoga for an hour. That kind of blended life that doesn't require you to be sitting in a specific place where your workday isn't split into 8, 8, 8. It might be split into 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Then you're in a little bit more control of your life having that exercise in your routine, even if it's just a walk around the block or a half an hour stroll or hopping on and getting off your butt and into something. It doesn't have to be strenuous on treadmills in gyms and working out and boxercise and Muay Thai. If you want to do those things, all the power to you. They're not necessary for you to have a quality of life, unless those things are important to you for having a quality of life. The exercise will also be very important to you. And boy, this one's a big one. You're gonna have to learn to get okay with saying no sometimes. That isn't just no to work, by the way. That's no to things in your life, such as, but we always meet on Tuesday night. Why aren't you meeting with us this Tuesday night? No, I can't because I have to actually get some stuff done elsewhere. It's about saying no to sometimes the family, not all the time, just saying no. They say, well, but every Sunday, every third Sunday of the month, we catch up and we meet up. Why can't we do that now? They may live very regimented, very planned, and very predictable lives, but you may not have quite that. Once you train people how to use how to deal with you, how you do train people how to treat you. Ultimately, you will get okay with saying no. The yes won't be the automatic answer. The no won't be the automatic answer. What will be the automatic answer is, hey, I'm not sure. Let me get back to you. As long as you get back to them with a yes or a no, and don't tend to have to justify your yeses and your nos. There's an old biblical passage I remember from Sunday school. It's some, I think it's a psalm or a proverb, which is let your yes be yes and your no be no. You don't have to let your yes and yes, your yes be justified or your no be justified. Oh no, I can't make it because I got to go down. I got to wash the nappies and put them on the line. Then I got to go down, pick up Billy from soccer, and then I got to run down to the library and take those back, pick up the dry clean. No one cares. Just say yes or no. People will get over it a lot quicker than you give them credit for. When you think about it, when people say yes or no to you, do you care about the excuses? If they say no, you might be like, oh, but do you really care what the excuse is? Probably not. They also don't care about yours. So a good work-life balance and a good blended life balance is also really so much easier to live if you just learn to be okay with saying the word no. In my own experience, I had a lot of balance as an employee between, say, 2012 and 2017 when I actually decided to lose a lot of weight, do a lot of exercise. And that time I had a very predictable work. Even though I traveled quite a lot with work, the hours were still very much set at 9 to 5. I'd start at 9, I finish at 5. I had a 9 o'clock meeting every morning. I know where I'd have to be and what I was doing. Even if I was in Geelong, the Gold Coast, Bundaberg, Ballarat, Bendigo, or Berry in South Australia. It didn't matter where I was. It was always the same thing. I'd go up, wake up at 5 a.m., go to the gym, do 2 hours of gym, then get ready for work, be having breakfast, and then finishing off breakfast and starting off my calls or going into a local office and starting to work 9 to 5. It's just the way that my life was lived. Now, that was very predictable when I was an employee, when I had set hours to be able to do that. Burnout came when I started to try and be a business owner. 2017 to 2019, when I really gave my third business a go, was when I suffered burnout very quickly because I just went straight from a very predictable, balanced lifestyle as an employee to then not having that balance because I was working 50 to 60 hours a week, trying to make this business work. It took a lot. And between 2017 and 2019, my mental health was not in a great place. I was in a terrible, terrible, unbalanced set of relationships, unbalanced expectations. I stopped working out. I got very unhealthy. I was eating all the wrong foods, and I'm still there right now. So I'm still recovering from that, even though I found a pretty good blend from about 2019 to 2021, particularly in the last year. I've managed to find a blend that's working a lot more for me as a business owner and a contractor. I can start to set my hours a bit more flexibly around the things I want to do. And most importantly, it's allowed me this year to pre-book a lot of work travel where I'm able to go and work from the places I want to work from because I want to work from them. It's not going to be as convenient as sitting in front of my giant screens, my ring light working and making my webinars look great, but I've got to learn how to work around that. And part of working around that will be finding the things to work for me when I'm working out of, say, the Doubletree Hilton in Cairns, or working from my parents' spare bedroom, or working from somewhere which isn't my normal base of operations, and learning how to live with that. Finding a blend often means that you're not going to have the best case scenario in place. You're not going to have the best possible equipment around you or the best possible support. Or you may not even have people who are working the same hours as you because they've finished at 5. But finding the right blend means that you learn to deal with that. You use the hours when people are around to get what you need from them, and then you move on and do the next thing. Finding a balance and a blend, you'll often just work around them. You'll go backwards and forwards them all your life. The more established you get in your business, the first few years, you don't expect to have a lot of balance. You may have to do a lot of blending, and then you'll get that balance. Then something will change, a recession will come along, or COVID-19 will come along, or you'll change, you'll upgrade your business, you'll buy a new business, and then that blend and balance cycle will happen again. You'll come backwards and forwards between the two of them quite a lot in your life. What you want to avoid though is burnout. You want to have there be a very strong red line in your life that warns you when burnout's on the way. Now, I'll tell you now that blend is going to be the area where you're more likely to slip over into burnout because it's not as regimented or as strict in start here, finish here. It can be very much a sign of burnout when you slip out of blend down rather than going back up into the balance. Ultimately, you want to get to the balance. Blend may work better for you for a season, but when you get to the point where I'm at right now, where this is a month-long burst of work, I'm starting to approach that burnout space. I'm looking forward to a bit of a trip down to Brisbane this weekend to see friends and relax a bit. That will help me have a much better time of it. But that balance blend thing, you're going to battle that a little bit. You're going to go backwards and forwards between them as a business owner over a period of time. Just make sure you do recognize that eventually you have to land in one of those. Otherwise, you're just going to land in the burnout area. There's some really good resources out there to help you to see how other people live their lives. I find that the freelancer site, which is designed for people who work from home and have micro businesses and need to be able to check in with other people every so often. Flying Solo is a great community site, which allows you to connect with other people who are in the same position as you as a freelancer or as a small business operating from home, particularly. Where you connect with other people, you can learn how to manage things like money, your productivity, get the right technology, connect with other people so you can chat and discuss ideas and work in little pods so that people know what they're doing. There's pretty much full of people just like you and me who are willing to connect with each other to have a better blend of their time. But there's also, plenty of other ways we can do that. For instance, I would say that it's a very good chance that when you find the right blend or balance, it's a very good life decision. But when you find the right blend or balance, it's also an even better business decision because you can only work in burnout. You can only work in ridiculous hours for a certain amount of time before things go horribly wrong for you. Finding the right blend or balance is a good life decision and an even better business decision. Thank you so much for joining me on this particular webinar tonight. Something I'm quite passionate about, something I'm living towards, something that I'm certainly in that blend period right now. I'm hoping in the next 2 years to get much more of a balance. But you know what? The way I travel with work, I live between multiple cities now. It's more likely that I'm going to end up having a blend for quite some time. But through that blend, I'll find my balance. I hope that you'll do that too. So thank you for taking time out this evening or this afternoon, depending on wherever you are, to not just work on your business, not just work in your business, but also work on your business. Maybe I need to sleep as well. Thank you so much. This will be on YouTube a little bit later as well. So thank you for taking some time out, and I'll see you again soon.